Good morning children, I am Isis. Now I am going to teach you RNA. RNA is a ribonucleic acid. So let's see the features. So RNA is a ribonucleic acid. And this RNA was the first genetic material. But from the experiment of Hershey and Chase, we concluded that DNA is the genetic material to almost all the organisms. But does RNA act as a genetic material in some viruses only? It acts as a catalyst and genetic material. So, the first feature, act as a catalyst and genetic material. Act as a catalyst and genetic material, and this RNA can synthesize DNA. You already learned about a reverse transcription. So the RNA can synthesize DNA, or we can say the DNA have evolved from RNA with chemical reactions. Okay, so that is the next point. RNA can synthesize DNA. Or we can say the DNA has evolved from RNA with the chemical reactions. Okay. And this RNA is single-stranded. It's not double-stranded like DNA. It is only single-stranded. And in this single strand, normally the strand, it's a polynucleotide, and this nucleotide is made of a sugar, phosphate group, then nitrogen bases. Here the sugar is a ribose sugar. Okay, so a ribose sugar plus a phosphate group form the backbone of this single-stranded RNA. Backbone of single-stranded RNA. Here the sugar is ribose sugar, but in case of DNA, the sugar is deoxyribose sugar. Okay, and then so this attached with the nitrogenous bases or nitrogen bases. So which are the nitrogen bases in RNA? Nitrogen bases. Nitrogen bases are normally purines and pyrimids. Purines and pyrimids. Here the purines are adenine and guanine. But the pyrimids are cytosine and uracil. Cytosine and uracil. Okay. So here, in case of DNA, this uracil is replaced by thymine. So here, instead of thymine in RNA, we can see uracil. So which are the purines and pyrimids? Adenine and guanine as in the DNA. But there is a change in the pyrimidine of RNA, that is, instead of thymine, here uracil present. Is it clear about this RNA? And now we can see the single-stranded RNA. How it forms? So normally a sugar group plus a phosphate group form a nucleoside. Then the nucleoside attached with the nitrogen base to form nucleotide. Okay, so here we can see, so ribose sugar plus phosphate, that is the backbone of RNA, that form ribonucleoside. Okay, then this ribonucleoside plus nitrogen base Okay, so this is the way how the RNA strand is formed. Is it clear? Now we can see the RNA, the types of RNA. So RNA, as you know, it is a single-stranded structure. There are three main types of RNA. They are, first one, mRNA, second one, tRNA, three, rRNA. So we can see the three types of RNA in detail. First one, mRNA. mRNA is also known as messenger RNA. The features of messenger RNA are, this is a long RNA, longest RNA. Okay, so it carries coded informations for protein synthesis. Coded informations for, that means genetic informations for translation process. So that is a function of this mRNA, and it acts as a template for DNA synthesis. Template means it's a mother strand that can synthesize a new strand. So this mRNA can act as a template strand for DNA synthesis. Okay. Next we can see tRNA. tRNA is also known as transfer RNA or soluble RNA or sRNA. Okay. So let's see the features. This is the smallest RNA and it acts as adapter molecule for translation. For protein synthesis, it acts as an adapter molecule. And the transfer of amino acids from the amino acid pool to the site of protein synthesis. So it helps for the transfer of amino acids from the amino acid pool at the time of translation. That I will teach you in detail in translation process. So these are the functions of this tRNA. Then we can see rRNA or ribosomal RNA. So these are the largest RNA. So these are the largest RNA. And here the features are, they are seen in ribosomes and they are synthesized in the nucleus by DNA. It constitutes 75% to 80%, 75 to 80% of the RNA content in a cell. So it is the most abundant RNA in the RNA content. And it forms the structure of ribosomes. And it plays a catalytic role during protein synthesis or translation. Is it clear about the types of RNA? Now we can see why this RNA is not a suitable genetic material. As I told you, it is a genetic material to some viruses only. In most of the organisms, most of the living things, the genetic material is DNA. Why this RNA is not a suitable genetic material? So as I told you, in place of thymine, uracil is here. So what are the reasons? Uracil is less stable as compared to thymine. And the next reason is the hydroxyl group, OH group present in RNA is a reactive group and makes RNA reactive, liable and degradable. And the third reason, RNA functions as catalyst and hence it is reactive and unstable. And the fourth reason, being unstable, mutation rate of RNA is very high. So this is the reason a change in the mutation or change in the RNA mutation occur in viruses. So that cause evolution in a very fast rate and have a very short lifespan also to the viruses. So this is the reason, because the mutation rate is very high due to this instability. Okay, and next we can see DNA versus RNA. So DNA is a double-stranded structure and it is the genetic material to almost all the living things. But RNA regulates expressions of information during protein synthesis, and here the DNA stores information needed to construct a protein. So let's see what are the major differences between DNA and RNA. So first we can write DNA. RNA. So the first point we can write, this is double-stranded. Double-stranded. And here the first point is, it is only single-stranded. Okay. And the second point is, the sugar present in DNA is deoxyribose sugar. But the sugar present in RNA is ribose sugar. Okay. And the third point, the nitrogen bases are adenine, guanine, cytosine and thymine. So here these two, adenine and guanine, are units and cytosine and thymine are pyramids. But in RNA there is a slight change. The nitrogen bases are adenine, guanine, cytosine and thymine. Thymine is replaced by, or we can say instead of thymine, uracil present. Uracil. Okay. And next point, fourth point, we can write this DNA is less chemically reactive. Chemically less reactive, but RNA is chemically more reactive. Okay. And another point, fifth point, we can see this DNA is structurally more stable. Structurally more stable. But RNA is structurally less stable. Okay. And the next point, sixth point, we can see this is a genetic material. DNA is the genetic material to almost all the living things. Almost all the living things. But RNA is the genetic material of some viruses only. Genetic material of some viruses only. So these are the major differences between DNA and RNA. 6 points are here. So is it clear about the difference between DNA and RNA? You can see another major difference, that is the DNA can store information needed to construct a protein. Okay. And RNA regulates expression of information during protein synthesis. Hope you understood everything about the RNA and the difference between RNA and DNA. That's all for today.